Welcome to Roary's Roundtable, an opportunity to talk the game of football with our pal Roary, presented by University of Michigan Credit Union. My name is Coach Chris.
Hi, I'm Coach Pat.
And look who's there. There he is in front of the
Roary.
whiteboard. Once again, Roary. Thank you, Roary, for being here. You got your writing hand ready to go? He's got his red marker, Coach.
Yeah, it means business today.
Good. Well, you know what? As we've said before, Roary's been spending a lot of time in front of the whiteboard, watching a lot of game film, studying the game of football, and spending time what he calls the classroom, so he can become a little bit more knowledgeable about the game of football. And he wants to do that so he can share that knowledge, that education with children, parents, and coaches about the basics of the game of football. So we're going to head to class right now. Professor Roary, are you ready? He's ready. Okay. Now, Roary, let's see here. He's standing in front of, it looks like a football field.
Sure does.
Yeah, 50 yards maybe. All right, good. Well, good. That's pretty good drawing, Roary. Again, we've talked before about Roary becoming a better drawer. There's some geometry in that field, I think, there too.
Mm-hmm.
I see all that math, all that geometry is paying off for Roary. It's good to see.
Such a curious cat.
Yeah, your hair's a little messy today, Roary.
He needs a trim.
Got to get to there. No? Oh,
no?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Maybe some extensions? No. No. Okay, gotcha. All right.
Leaving the hair alone. Leaving the hair alone.
Fair enough. He wants to get to talking football, not hair. All right. Let's talk, Roary, about the first thing we want to talk about today is what we're going to talk about common terms heard on maybe football broadcasts. So if you're turning on the TV and there's the commentators are talking about the game of football, we're going to talk about some very common terms that you might hear on TV that you maybe didn't understand, that hopefully we can bring some more clarity to those particular terms for you. All right, the first term we're going to talk about today is what we call the red zone. All right, Coach Pat.
Red marker. Clever.
I see it. Brilliant, Roary. All right. Now, Roary's going to talk about, Roary's going to draw about the red zone. Coach Pat, what would you consider the red zone?
Well, again, that's one of those terms that are just kind of tossed around and broadcast. And I mean, if you know what it is, maybe you don't even pay attention to it. But if you're not sure, you might be thinking, I don't see any red parts of the football field. But essentially, it's the 20 yards, the 20-yard line on in. Okay, and so that's the game of football is tricky, right? You think maybe the closer you get to scoring a touchdown, the easier it becomes. Well, things for whatever reason kind of tighten up, down in that red zone. And so it's an important part of the game that statistically coaches follow. And what type of red zone offense do you have? What type of red zone defense do you have? Are you good at finishing a drive and punching it in for a touchdown, or do you have to settle for field goals, and vice versa when you're on defense? So it's an important part of the game that's monitored. Teams practice it. Usually there's red zone periods out at the practice field that coaches are practicing the red zone offense and defense, and so it's important to understand what the red zone is.
So I think, from an offensive standpoint, obviously, as you mentioned, the goal is obviously to get the ball in the end zone. Once you're inside the 20-yard line, the more times you get inside the red zone, hopefully you can convert those to points and touchdowns for that matter. And I'm sure from a defensive standpoint, it changes the way you operate your defense as well, in terms of there's not as much depth to be able to go downfield. Obviously, you can't. There's only so much. You've got 10 yards in the end zone, so you've got a maximum of 30 yards from the 20 on into the back end line. So that probably dictates what you're going to do defensively as well. So you've got to be good on both sides in that red zone. I've always wondered offensively why it's called the red zone. To me, the term red zone tells you that you're supposed to stop. And from a mentality standpoint, offensively, you want to keep going. You want to keep going into that end zone. So again, it's one of those terms that you kind of wonder where they originated from, but nonetheless, it's become a common term within the game of football, and red zone is what they call it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the defense, maybe somebody on defense created the term red zone, right? Because that's, hey, they've come far enough. We gotta put the brakes on. We gotta stop them here, and And from a psychological standpoint, I mean, that really can play into it. If you're an offense that drives all the way down to the field and you get down so close to the end zone, and you don't score a touchdown, that can almost feel a little deflating. And as a defense, if a team drives, but you're finally able to get a stop, down in the red zone there, then that can shift the momentum a little bit too, and you can kind of feel a little bit of like that was a great effort to stop them. So it's there's a lot to play when it comes to the red zone.
Excellent. Thanks for clarifying that term. Thanks for drawing that, Rory. We appreciate that. Now, the next term we want to talk about is, you might have heard, again, the announcers on the radio or TV talk about these terms: the field versus the boundary. Okay? The field versus the boundary. Now, I know Rory on his football field there doesn't have hash marks listed on the field. And if you noticed in the game of football, the NFL hash marks are much more narrow than they are at the collegiate level or at the high school and youth football level. All right. Those youth and high school and collegiate hash marks are much wider than they are in the NFL. The NFL hash marks are about the width. They are the width of the football field goalpost. And so we want to talk about what the field and the boundary is. Coach Pat, what do you think, or what are those terms, and what do they mean when you hear those on a broadcast?
Yeah, I mean, speaking from an offensive perspective, I played on offense. And so, just kind of understanding where you're at on the field, and maybe from a play caller standpoint, somebody who calls the plays, knowing that what you have more space to work with. Okay. And so essentially, if Rory's got the football up there, maybe the offense ran a play and they ran out of bounds onto the right there, the referee's going to mark that football. He's going to spot that football on that right hash where Rory's got it drawn up there. And so that tells you the field, okay? You got more field. Think of more field to your left, okay? So all that space out there is what we'd call the field side, okay? And then the other side, I mean, you've got the boundary, okay? That's the boundary side. So you got the boundary, meaning the out of bounds line is right there nice and close to you to your right. So, there's a lot that goes into calling a play from an offensive standpoint, but say you're going to run toss sweep. It might not make the most sense to run toss sweep to the boundary just because you don't have a whole lot of field to work with. It might make more sense to run that toss sweep to the field side, Rory, right? Yeah, to your left there, because you got a little bit more field to work with. So field and boundary, those are a couple of terms. I don't know if you hear it as much as, say, the red zone, but it's definitely a couple of terms that are thrown out there from time to time in broadcast, and it's good to know what they mean.
I've also heard defensively, I've heard on the broadcast them call a field corner and a field corner and a boundary corner. And that simply means the cornerback in that defensive secondary is either playing the field side or the boundary side. And so that's one way that I've heard those terms being used from a defensive side of the game.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If maybe you have a little bit of a faster corner or a better cover corner, you probably want to put him to the field. He's got more field to cover, right? So whereas if you're a boundary corner, you got that sideline as a little bit of a help there. So yeah, that's a great point that defensive coordinators, defensive teams sometimes assign guys based on where they're at on the playing field. So, hey, good drawing, Rory, by the way. Really like it.
Field versus boundary, common terms heard in the game of football. The next term we want to talk about that you might hear on a football broadcast is the box, both from an offensive standpoint and a defensive standpoint. When a broadcaster is referring to the box, Coach Pat, what does he mean?
I guess it could go a couple different ways. From an offensive standpoint, usually I think of the tackle box, Rory, right? So anything in between the tackles. Okay, so from an offensive standpoint, running the ball inside the box, okay, or getting the ball outside onto the perimeter. So when you think of the box on offense, generally, that's where my mind goes. Is anything that's happening in between those tackles inside a box, similar to like what Rory has drawn up there.
Excellent. So The defensively, I've also often heard broadcasters talk about 6 in the box, 7 in the box, 8 in the box. What does that mean?
Loading the box. Yeah. I mean, the thing that you want to keep in mind there is anything close to the line of scrimmage. So Roary's gotten a box drawn on defense. So again, think close to the line of scrimmage when you're thinking of the box. Here he's got 7 men in the box is what the announcer might say. So you got 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers. Sometimes you hear they walk that safety up into the box, meaning they brought that safety down close to the line of scrimmage, be it for extra run support or potentially to bring them out of pressure on a pass play. So think of close to the line of scrimmage, again, in and around that tackle box.
Interesting. That's what the box stands for, both on offense and defense. Okay. Next term you heard of, probably heard this more than any of the terms we've talked about to this point in time, is what is a blitz?
Blitz. All right. So when you think of blitz, it's a defensive scheme, if you will, and there are a ton of them. Coaches are always up trying to think of different ways to get to the quarterback. Generally, you think of a blitz situation. It's a pass play, right? It's a passing situation, but it can be tricky and it can be used and it can be useful in the run game as well to try to stop try to stop the run. So essentially, a blitz is you're trying to bring more defenders than the offense can block. Okay, and so Roary, you can bring safeties, you can bring linebackers, you can bring corners. Yeah, I mean corner blitzes are kind of fun to watch and see. They'll say that the blitz got home, meaning the blitz it worked and they were able to sack the quarterback or tackle a ball carrier in the backfield. But the thing you got to think about with a blitz is also is that it's a bit of a gamble, right? So if you bring more defenders that the offense can block, but the quarterback's able to escape the pocket or they're able to get the pass off, that leaves you less defenders back behind to try to break up a pass or stop the offense. So it's a little bit of a gamble. You have to be very disciplined on both sides. Making sure on defense that you're getting to the right gap when you're in your blitz, and then on offense, understanding that you know how to pick up the blitz and block the blitz, and the running backs and the tight ends helping the offensive linemen out to try to slow down that blitz. So blitzing is just that you're getting blitzed by a number of defenders, and either the defense wins or the offense wins.
Rory, you got a lot of lines and circles and squares and X's and boxes on that board there. Does that all make sense to you?
He looks like a mad scientist, doesn't he? I mean, it looks like a formula for success, I guess. I don't know.
I hope so. You know what? That's part of what we're doing here at Roary's Roundtable is providing some terms and some ways that you can learn the game in the classroom, on the whiteboard, if you will. And so you can't always be spending time on the football field doing drill work and improving your skills that way. You got to rest your body periodically. You got to make sure you're eating right, you get enough rest. And oh, by the way, study your playbook and study your film and study the things in the whiteboard. And that's exactly what Professor Roary is doing right here. Good job, Roary.
Way to go, Roary.
Excellent. Well, you know what? Until next time with Professor Roary, this is Coach Chris.
This is Coach Pat.
We thank you for joining us here today on Roary's Roundtable. Bye, Roary.